New regulations will prohibit firing weapons at a moving vehicle unless officers are being fired upon. The announcement comes on the heels of District Attorney Mitch Morrissey deciding that no charges will be filed against the two officers that shot and killed Jessie Hernandez earlier this year. Mike, this was a pretty big story. We had local protests when it comes to what happened to Jessie Hernandez. As you see the change in policy, was it the right thing for the Denver police to do?
I think that if it appeared to be just like a knee-jerk reaction to, oftentimes when new policies or laws are implemented on the heels of either an injustice or a tragedy or a combination of the two, it's often bad policy. In fact, they say that any law named after like a dead kid is often a bad law. But in this case, this whole idea of the police shooting at moving vehicles has actually been debated for a long time within police circles and within police policy circles. So it's not like they just grabbed this out of thin air. In fact, the Police Foundation has recommended it, and I believe the second police think tank, the Police Executives Research Foundation, has also recommended this. And New York implemented this over a decade ago. LA has implemented this. And the data shows that this hasn't necessarily caused any new safety hazards to officers. The rationale behind it is, of course, that you don't know who else is in that car, and so oftentimes if you're firing on a car that's moving, you don't know if there's a kid in a car seat. In fact, this happened in Santa Fe not too long ago, where a guy hijacked a car, stole a car, and turned out to be a 4-year-old in the back seat, and the police fired on it. And so there's good reasons to do this, but they didn't grab it out of thin air. And if it appeared that they had grabbed it out of thin air as a way to kind of appease what had happened, then I think it would be open to criticism. But I think it's a pretty legitimate policy that's going around the country.
Eric, what do you think about the optics of the announcement being just about 48 hours after Mitch Morrissey's announcement about the officers?
I thought the optics were curious, that the timing was a little close in my mind. I think the new policy, I'm not an expert in these issues, doesn't stop us around this table, but the new policy seems to make sense to me as opposed to the old policy. That said, I also support Mitch Morrissey's decision not to file charges here. I think the officers, unlike in many other cases where there is some deep suspicion, I don't think charges were due or warranted in this particular case. So the optics were curious that Chief White chose to link it that closely to Morrissey's decision. I thought the real news of the week was this recall campaign that has been launched by a lot of minority and left-leaning groups against Mitch Morrissey, saying that he, in 11 years as a DA, has never filed a case against the police. Now, it takes 53,000 signatures over the next few months to get a recall on the ballot, which means you need 70 or 80,000. It's a high bar to do that, but it is indicative to me of how hot this issue is these days, certainly around the country, but right here in Denver and many communities, that this is even being considered, much less being pursued.
Mike, do you think the timing of the announcement from the Denver police was meant to codify or at least address any community anger over the lack of charges being filed?
Probably. I mean, that's a quick timeline to have a new policy together. That said, and while the optics of that certainly are curious, I think Chief White and the department are to be lauded for quickly acting and bringing their standards in line with not only New York City, but also Aurora and other major metropolitan areas.
Patty, what do you think? The right thing they're going to do and the right timing?
Well, the most curious timing was the fact that the Jessie Hernandez decision for Morrissey came down Friday afternoon. You know, when you always try to sneak the news that might upset people because they're not going to hear it. Chief White had actually announced months ago that he was looking into this policy. We'd written it, other people had written it, that Denver was behind what other major police departments are doing with its policy on shooting at moving vehicles. There were 4 different shoots. DPD shoots and moving vehicles that injured people since last July. So that they came down with this decision, they announced it 2 days afterwards, is a little curious, but that they made that decision is the right one, and it's good that they announced it. I'm with Eric. I think the DA's race is going to be crazy. I mean, you could recall Mitch Morrissey, but he's not going to be there very long. There are 3 very interesting candidates who've all announced they're running for his seat, and it is going to be the hot election that we didn't have with the mayor's race, but I think there'll be a lot of discussion.
And that's the election that happens in November because they moved that one from the regular municipal elections?
Right, because it's with the DAs
Gotcha.
across the state.
Gotcha.
He's technically a statewide official.
Ah, there you go. Okay.